So do I feel like an outsider in the industry? Always. There's almost an imposter syndrome because the industry moves so fast and it's so dynamic. Very few of us actually can safely say that, we have got this down to a science. I don't think I will ever get comfortable, being in this industry. I always have to work harder.
Welcome to our show, Joseph. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your origin story because I always like to understand, how leaders grew up and how that shaped who they are today.
Yeah.
And I read that you grew up in a one-room rental flat.
Yes.
And today you run a business that generates $80 million in revenue.
That's right.
That's an extraordinary climb. What was it like growing up and how did that shape who you are today?
So I did grow up in a one-room HDB flat. I think they call it, in Hokkien, it's a tsepang pua tia. It's actually one bedroom with half a living room. Literally, that's how it's translated. And there were 5 of us staying in that room. And all of us, we just roll out our so-called mattress when we want to sleep. I still don't remember how we managed to do it. Because right now, everyone has a bedroom and what have you got in that sense. And you turn the lights on and off when you go to bed. But I think during that period itself, it was just very natural for us to just huddle together and just be a family, right? We hardly get together for dinner and all that, but at night we'll all be sleeping together.
Yeah,
that's how it was.
Oh, nice. Are you the oldest, youngest? What birth order?
Well, I'm in the middle. I have an older sister and a younger sister, and of course my parents and all, and occasionally my grandmother will come and stay with us. So you can imagine it's just one of those environment. And the neighborhood is generally very poor. My neighbor was actually somebody that bakes bread. And they'll bake the traditional bread that they have, that we have, right? I mean, with the huge, it's like a big loaf that they use in the coffee shop.
Oh, the old roti, right?
Yes, correct,
I love that. Yeah.
And so then they will...
That's a very useful neighbor to have.
Yes, very. And we were so poor that at a point in time, we would go over there and get their, sliced leftovers. And they'll be kind enough to give it to us. And sometimes they even give us some kaya, And we were always comforting ourselves, saying that, actually this is the best part of the bread. Of course, it's cancerous by now, we know that. But it's really, really nice. And we would just take that and we would eat that. And I remember having that even for lunch and dinner because sometimes, you just don't have the food on the table itself.
Yeah. What did your parents do?
Well, my father, he was a bus driver, but he was on and off jobs. I remember he had a really difficult time, trying to keep a job and all that. And then my mother was just a seamstress and she was helping people, to mend, and to take care of stalls and all that in a sense. And so both of them not professional. There was really no way that they were able to get out of that poverty cycle, I must say. And in fact, I think in my whole estate itself, I doubt many of them did. Many of the kids my age, they left school early to work.
Earn money for the family.
Yeah, that's right. And that actually made me very insistent that people actually do finish their studies, including the people that works in the one group. We have our own academy and all that to make sure that people actually gets trained and be qualified. Push them through the system, because I think during that period when I was much younger, I do see many of my peers falling off the system, and once they do that, they don't get their training. They get stuck in a job that doesn't pay them well, and their whole family suffers all over again. And so it's important that we don't go into that cycle again.
Yeah, it's very hard to break out of the poverty cycle. What seeded your determination then? Because I also saw an old interview where you said business was very far from your mind at that time, when you were growing up. So where did that change or where did that shift happen?
First and foremost, I think when you say change, the first thing that changed was the way I treat studies. Because when I grew up in Rumah Tinggi, in a sense, study wasn't a priority. That was something that was it's a necessity, right? For us to get through. And I remember going to secondary school and I was one of the worst students. I was really just 6 points off the minimum clearance to get into secondary school. But it was one of the worst schools in Singapore. So I didn't even get a chance to get into a 4-year course. But the good thing about Mei Chin was really that the school has a system where if you work hard enough in your first year, you get a chance to get into a 4-year course in the second year. And so that's what I
what you
did. Yes, that's what I did. I went in there, topped that cohort itself, went into the express stream, and then generally went into the 4-year course and topped the school.
Oh wow,
at that point in time. Yeah.
So you have a pretty unconventional approach to leadership, which I want to get into. Where did your unconventional approach to business and leadership really begin?
Actually, it's very late. I mean, it was really during the time when I had to start the one group itself that I started to dabble with such a leadership model in that sense. I mean, of course, conventionally, most of us are told, right? It must be hierarchical, basically a heroic leadership style. You need to be able to show and lead people and guide them and tell them what to do and be inspirational. But when I started one group, it wasn't like that. I was working in Symantec. Instead of trying to do what a traditional entrepreneur would do, and that's really to quit a job and then dive in, I decided that no, I'm going to just structure the system in such a way that I give information, authority, autonomy to the people on the ground and make sure that they get guidance and they are able to manage the business without me having to be there. And so I would take care of one part of the business, and I basically give that freedom, the authority and autonomy to the people that's around me and treat them like my peers. And hence, that system started to grow.
Yeah.
So it was a 3-man team, then it became a 6-man team. Now it's a 20-man team at a tier 1 level. We have different parts of our businesses that we handle. The sales team, the finance team, the HR team, and the marketing team, they are our functional team. And they are given a lot more authority and a lot more check and balance in a role than the typical functional team would have. So if a decision has to be made, instead of going to leader or a manager, they go laterally to their peers who are in the functional team, and that then get things done. Yeah. So that was the model that I adopted when I started one group. I have never really experimented with that before. Except when I was in OCS. Of course, in OCS.
That's the officer cadet school in the army.
Yes, in the army, right? That's what you do. You have to work together as one team rather than as one person. There's no one person that actually leads an entire army, even though you know that there's hierarchy, right? But it's never been that way. It's always been a team.
Yeah, interesting. So do you think it started from there, like when we saw
Definitely the knowledge or the willingness to accept people to be your peers, to people who are, working with you, to be somebody that checks and balances you and helps you to improve and to move things along. Definitely started from the leadership culture, the leadership training started from during my military service itself. Because I suppose that was the very first time that I really was thrown into a leadership position.
This is a very pertinent and also very reassuring conversation because my son just became a Singapore citizen. He's only 4 years old,
yes.
But we had hesitated about national service, and if he doesn't grow up here, in his later teen years, would he struggle to adapt? So very glad to hear that the Singapore Army has its benefits in, I guess, shaping men to be leaders as well.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if somebody goes into OCS, there are many other functions that they can get into as well. But the officer cadet school, so it's definitely one that trains everyone to the maximum.
After army, what was your first job, and then leading to Symantec? What was that journey like?
I graduated from NTU with a degree in accountancy, and so I joined KPMG, then Arthur Andersen, and then Ernst & Young before I joined Symantec. So during my 20 years of professional experience, that was the 4 companies that I was in. So three of them are audit firms. But when I was in Andersen, I was actually doing corporate finance. And I was in Ernst & Young, I was actually doing consultancy. So it's sort of like a very broad range of activities. I never really was an auditor or an accountant. I was always doing something else.
And did you have F&B or hospitality projects when you were doing consulting?
No, actually, so that's the funny part, right? I started one group because it was my MBA project, and what I was trying to prove was that a person like me who doesn't have any experience or any competitive advantage in starting that particular business is able to get it going and be very successful in it just purely through strategy and planning. And so therefore I got to choose an industry that I'm completely unaware, not involved in. And that's why I chose F&B.
But how, there were so many, you could have chosen aeronautical engineering or, something crazy. Why F&B hospitality?
Well, in order for me to really test my theories and to put things to basically put tests in place and all that, I really need a very competitive environment, so that there won't be any what you call noises, that comes into the testing itself. And F&B has probably the lowest barrier to entry and the highest competition, all the industries that I know. And at the same time, it also has a very short business cycle, which allows multiple testings to take place, over a certain period of time. And so I chose, F&B, and every day since then I regret it. It's like there's no day that you can rest.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody can say how difficult their industry is, but this industry is really, really
It
tough.
is one of the toughest. Yeah, I was going to. Why did you choose the most competitive? You said that was the decision.
That was the decision.
And what do you mean by the noises?
Well, I mean, if it's not competitive, let's say if there's a licensing or a requirement, for certain competitors to pass, if there's a high barrier to entry and all that in that sense, then a lot of the testing that I'll be doing may have variations because of all these structural restrictions. And so whatever I'm doing right now, for example, collective leadership was something that I tested quite a fair bit during the past 20 years in one group itself. It is a very robust system because the environment that surrounds the industry is really very competitive, and because it's low barrier to entry, you get every kind of so-called competitors that's inside there, and therefore it's not biased towards any particular angle, and that then produce results that can be easily examined, reviewed, and then, of course, put back in action and retested again.
Yeah, that is such a fascinating perspective.
Yeah.
It is so true that every former lawyer, whoever, school dropout, or anyone can enter the industry.
Exactly, yeah.
And I've always thought that was the challenge to the industry, but I never saw it as a benefit that would actually attract somebody to come in. So yeah, that's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah. Again, I regret.
So do you think not coming from the industry was a benefit in that you don't have the sentimentality or the, like I've always grown up wanting to, I was like running around my grandma's kitchen and I grew up wanting to be a chef and I want to run my own restaurant.
Yeah.
And that makes it very hard for people to make sound business decisions, right? Because they are so emotionally attached to the concept, the product, the service that they are providing. Do you see that as an advantage? Do you feel like an outsider to the industry? And do you think that's actually an advantage for you?
So do I feel like an outsider in the industry? Always. I mean, the reality is that there are so many people that has got so much more knowledge than I do in different parts of the business, right? And so there's almost an imposter syndrome kind of problem, right? But I must say that speaking to all my peers out there, I think every one of us feels the same way because the industry moves so fast and it's so dynamic in that sense. Very few of us actually can safely say that, we have got this down to a science in that sense. It's very difficult. So all of us are struggling to keep up with the pace of the change that is in the industry. And some of us do it better than others. I don't think I will ever get comfortable, being in this industry. I always have to work harder and try to move ahead, of the rest.
Having this imposter syndrome, do you think that's an advantage?
There's an advantage and there's a disadvantage to it.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is that the skill sets that I bring into this industry itself is also something that maybe some of the others will feel that, they wish they have that, the corporate attitude towards, how the functional team should be managed. For some of them, yes, they are able to cook really well. They understand their ingredients really well and all that. But that's to help them with whatever products that they are creating. But then there are a lot of other things like things on marketing, things on sales, corporate finance, and basically even just general, administration and management itself. Every one of us have got our different skill sets. And the good thing about collective leadership is really that whatever I am weak in, I'm able to bring somebody else in to mend that hole. Yeah, that's right. And so that team of 20 that we have right now at the tier 1, every one of us have our different competencies and capabilities. We have on average, we have worked together for more than 10 years, on average, the 20 of us. So that's an eternity when you look at it from a so-called, especially in the F&B context, right? And so people like Chris Miller and all that, he was a chef. And he's also a head of marketing for us. Janet is actually a head of sales and also a head of weddings. And so they are very, very good in what they do. And then there's Massimo, who's in charge of operations, and Christian Saus, who's responsible for systems and franchises and all that. They all have different skill sets that I don't have. I don't have that skill sets, and we got together and worked as a team. On average, those people I just mentioned, 15 years, we have been working together. So it's sort of like a team that grew from pre-one altitude days to what it is right now. Quite an achievement, I must say.
Yeah, I think 20 years is definitely a lifetime, and it's remarkable the team that you've built, especially in an industry where labor is very fickle and there's high turnover rates. I think the F&B industry anyway is such a wide spectrum, right? That no one really understands the full spectrum. You have like fine dining, you have hawker, everything in between. Catering. Mid-tier quick service. Your first concept was One Rochester. How do you decide your entry point in the spectrum, in the wide spectrum of F&B concepts?
As part of the thesis that I was writing, it was actually for, I started the business because of my MBA. I was one distinction short, for a distinction for that MBA itself, and hence I decided that I'm not just going to write a report, but I'm going to just put it into action. And like I said just now,
to get the distinction.
And so I got my distinction. So
nice.
And 20 years ago, that was
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it was difficult. And so I was very, very focused on making sure that not only do I do a good job to get it successful and all that, the basis must be right. It starts off with getting basically a strategic plan going, looking at where the red oceans are, and then where the blue oceans are, trying to make sure that we go right into the center of where nobody's playing. And hence One Rochester came up, because it was like a colonial building out in the middle of nowhere at that point in time.
It was so hard to access.
Exactly. And then, it was right in the middle of nowhere. The MRT wasn't even, it was between us and MRT. That was like, everything else was just green. No Star Vista, no One North. And I remember my sister saying, why are you stupid to go and build something in the middle of nowhere? 15,000 square feet of space, and there's a bar, it's a cafe, but who's going to journey there? But true enough, after we built it, people came, and taxi queues, starts to, form in Buona Vista Road itself, because they were waiting to pick up the people going off. And it was because we actually focused really on trying to build something that nobody else was doing. Of course, after we started doing that, then Dempsey came out and all that. So everybody started to use the same formula. I remember we were number 1 Rochester, and then there was another 2, number 3, number 4 Rochester. They actually stopped construction, and then they reevaluated their plans, because they saw what we were doing. We were bringing out basically the dining and the bar and all that into the garden, and making the garden very beautiful. So they actually decided that they are going to change their plans as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like very revolutionary at a point in time, where then after that, there was a lot of competition that came in.
But it became a cluster. It became a very vibrant cluster.
Exactly. It wasn't just about Rochester Park. It was also about other places, other, what do you call it? Other enclaves that also does the same thing. Yeah. So
how did you feel about that early success and that validation? Because it could have gone very wrong. 15,000, who starts with 15,000 square feet of space for their first venture? Most people take a little 300 square foot or start at home, right? A little private kitchen, and now it's allowed.
Ironically, I was quite confident that it will work, because of the way we have positioned ourselves, and the way we felt the market. There was a need in the market itself, and I was able to look at this from a very objective angle, in a sense of I'm not really interested in a particular cuisine or particular approach. I'm interested to make sure that this works, for the customers and also for the landlord. And so for me, if this model does not work, I would probably be able to change that. I was very confident that the way we were doing this just makes a lot of sense. So I was...
You'll be able to change it how? Because you're not fixated on a concept and a cuisine?
Yes, correct. We were not beholden to that particular cuisine, or we were not required to really turn it into a wine bar, or and gradually became, a very chill, very nice place, for people to go to. And then later on, the weddings came in, right?
Weddings and events business, was that part of your business plan or was that an evolution?
It was already a part of the business plan, but we underestimated what it could be. We did not realize that it's going to be such an important component, because when it's beautiful enough for weddings, it's usually good enough for everything.
Yeah.
Bars, cafes, clubs. And so that's why we sort of like place an emphasis to make sure that, that there's always a beautiful spot for solemnization in any of one group's venue itself. And that space is also usually also used for a stage for corporate events and, activities and all that. And that works out really well for us.
Yeah.
And ironically, then that makes that 15,000 a requirement. Because if you want it to be a wedding venue, if you want it to be an events venue, then you'd really need to take up a really big space.
Yeah. And today, your business also includes one host, which is wedding and events.
It's Singapore's biggest wedding planner.
Wow,
right.
congratulations.
Yeah.
So how many weddings do you do a year?
Close to 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, close to 1,000 weddings. We got many venues, right? And we try to make sure that every single bride and groom couples that come in, they get a very unique experience. And so that continues to be very crucial for our growth.
But yeah, I wanted to go back to your book, which I brought here and I've really enjoyed reading. I've even annotated many, many pages.
Oh, thanks.
So you coined two big ideas, right? Remote entrepreneurship and collective leadership, R entrepreneurship,
That's right.
and C leadership.
Right.
If you had to summarize your 300-page book, let's say you're in a lift with someone and you had 60 seconds to tell them what these two concepts are about. What would you say?
So collective leadership is really the traditional hierarchical leadership, where we just remove the manager and then we make sure that everyone that is in the circle that's reporting to the manager are able to make decisions that is properly checked and balanced amongst themselves. So, you have got a functional team members like HR, finance, marketing, sales, helping them to make a proper decision that is beneficial for the long term. Very similar to when you have a manager. Of course, what we did was that we removed the manager and make sure that everyone else have the information, the authority, and the autonomy. Remote entrepreneur is somebody that starts a business and became and he's basically an entrepreneur, but he's remote from managing it. Not that he's away all the time, but he probably he relies actually on a system that allows his management team to manage the company on his behalf and reporting into him without him having to get involved in all the decision making, but yet at the same time he's able to control. And so I have a remote management system definition inside the book itself that really talks about how these checks and balances actually work. So a remote entrepreneur usually uses a collective leadership model to help him to manage the business.
So you wrote this book 10 years ago, 2015. But today, the idea of having a side hustle, of working remotely is very commonplace. It's the dream of many Gen Zs and millennials. But you clarify that remote entrepreneurship is not the same as remote working, right? What is the difference?
Maybe we have to redefine what the remote working really means. When we run a business, a business is a series of activities, and one of which, of course, is the conceptualization of the products and the services that we want. We conceptualize it, and then we sort of source for the ingredients and the materials to build whatever we need to. Then we market, and then we sell, and then we book the customers in, whether through reservations or, we sell them something and they come in, and then we service, we provide them the service, we provide them the product, we collect the money, and then we do, post-sale services. And then the money then goes back into, the whole cycle again. You rinse and you repeat. Whenever we talk about somebody that sort of does remote working and then starts a business, at home itself, it is because they are probably only tackling one part of this entire activities. So they may be buying and selling. They may be storing and selling. They may be, in the upfront part creating, or they may be in the marketing portion. They do not actually do the full gamut of business. Ironically, F&B is one that does the full gamut, end to end, where you conceptualize, collect money, and employ it back in again, which is why it's so difficult, because any part of that activity chain itself, can
very
collapse.
hands-on.
Very hands-on and can collapse anytime. Competition is also very, very intense across the entire chain of activities. So whenever we talk about somebody who, they have, because of their skill sets, their ability, their unique selling point, or because of they have a license or something, and they are able to do something, it is because they are doing a small portion of it, of the entire value chain. Now, if you want them to do something that is probably conceptualization all the way until a physical service products is produced and given to our customers and all that, then you need a much broader team, much broader skill sets, and that's when collective leadership really must come in to help. So I think that's something that makes a big difference between us and between a collective leader or remote entrepreneur versus somebody that stays at home and
that's a part of the whole value chain.
The whole chain, that's right.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The notion of collective leadership is very unconventional, especially in an Asian context, right? Where you traditionally have this tauke who, built the business super hands-on, and it's so hierarchical. It's my way or the highway, and you hear that a lot. You see that a lot in the particularly Asian companies in very traditional industries. So how have your concepts and your book, how has that been received by your maybe peers who are more traditional in their ways of thinking? Do they say, it's never going to work for me, or, you're just being idealistic?
Yeah. They're all very kind to me, but they'll all reject my idea. Many of them even assume that they actually are already having a collective leadership because they have their weekly meeting. So they think that that's collective leadership. They will hear what their guys have to say, but it is ultimately they are still the leader. Collective leadership obviously is when the leader himself, or the owner in this case, right, sees himself as just one of the leaders, and he does his job as part of the leadership in a sense. He's also check and balance by them, right? So the traditional tauke finds that very difficult to understand.
What's the biggest and the hardest mindset shift to make, and how can more people make it? Because you also say in your book you had some anecdotes, right? Which you've sort of couched slightly fictionally without saying that it's yourself.
Yes.
But you've got some examples where your team made decisions that you don't necessarily agree with,
yes,
and
that's right.
that you don't think actually is the best idea or the best solution.
Correct.
But you've had to go with it because of this notion. So how can leaders make this mindset shift where they say, okay, I don't agree, but I'll let you run with it?
That is actually the biggest fundamental shift. In order to do that, you have to give information authority autonomy to the people, which a lot of so-called taukes, they wouldn't do it, right? They will just give enough information for a person to function. Whereas what is required is actually a lot of information so that the person not only can do what he's doing, but he can do more and he can develop more. And he's given more information, more authority, more autonomy than what is required of his job. That taukes will find very difficult because to them it's like, no, I mean, if I were to give him the entire P&L, then will he not argue with me that he should be getting a higher pay?
True, yeah. Or he's going to run off to start a competitive business, or he's going to go work for your competitor.
Correct.
Do you not think that for your own business?
It's always a risk. I mean, we have people that comes in and then they left us and they start their own business competing against us. Most of them, actually all of them, don't survive because ultimately they may understand part of the business, but they may not. They don't have a collective leadership like we have. And usually this is something that is born out of ignorance rather than ironically knowledge itself. Even though they may have some of this information, they may not be able to use it, just like the rest of the 20 people will be able to do so. The people that work together, the directors and the team of 20, we've been working together for 20 years. So with the trust that you place with the people around us, they will also return that trust. And honestly, they can't really do much. I mean, even if they have a P&L, what can they do? I mean, maybe challenge us in the exact so-called products that we are selling. That doesn't make sense because we are much bigger than anybody else that wants to do a startup. We are also in a very competitive business itself. It doesn't. We don't really have a trade secret that allows us to earn that much money. That a secret sauce that really is making a big difference. We don't have that. we firmly believe in giving information authority and autonomy, but the traditional Tauges, they will probably feel that no, I mean, they do not want other people to compete against them. They do not want other people to challenge them when they're making decisions. And I think that is the hurdle that they have to cross. Obviously, the second generation, the people that are going to take over the Tauges, those are the ones that really wants to put in a collective leadership much faster, much earlier than what their fathers would want. That's where I'm seeing a lot of traction, a lot of people very interested to push this along.
What about the idea, as a lot of Asian business families have, of preserving the company to pass it down to the next generation, right? And so you wouldn't want outsiders to come in and fully understand the business. Is that a challenge? And how about for yourself? I mean, you have a son.
Yes.
How old is he now?
17. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you think that he will join the business one day or hand it over to him?
I don't think so. I doubt so. It's too tough. No, I don't think he'll be interested in this. I think we have to differentiate between the ownership and the collective leadership itself. In one group, the collective leaders are collective leaders. I'm the sole shareholder of the group. The collective leadership is the one, however, that's running the company, running the business. And they make and they lose money based on decisions that's made by the collective leadership, never really by the shareholder. And I believe that needs to be, differentiated. Of course, in a Tauge business, maybe somewhere else, they may have a collective leadership, and if the collective leadership is not performing for them, then probably they have to shift. They have to, get other people to replace. It's not like, once you put in a collective leadership, then everything is going to be just hunky dory. And so they have to get the correct collective leadership in. No different from when they bring in a general manager for a factory, bring in as VP of sales and all that. You will have to rely on them to perform. And if they don't perform, then, the business does get challenged. Collective leadership as well, you need to adjust it, and you need to make sure that everyone is motivated. And what we have seen so far is that information authority and autonomy is a strong motivation for people to own the business and to really run the business as if it's theirs.
Just to play devil's advocate, right? How much of your success do you think was down to luck, right? Because you have, in your collective leadership model, you have to hire the right people. So maybe luck in finding the right people and trusting the right people. Luck in the timing of, when you had set up your business in the early 2000s. I mean, conditions today are so much more challenging with a lot of volatility and uncertainty in the global economy. So how much of your success do you think can be replicated under different circumstances?
I wouldn't call it down to luck, but I think we make many, many decisions. And in the collective leadership environment itself, a lot more decisions are made on a daily basis than if it's a hierarchical one, which is why we can move very fast. We are into restaurants, bars, cafes, clubs, weddings, events. And in every single one of this, we are one of the best in these areas. We also have got multiple iconic venues and all that in a sense. We've very important landlords and all that, and of course our customer base are also very diverse. This cannot be handled by one single person or one single general manager that then says, okay, this is the kind of customers that I want. A lot more decisions are made by the entire team across. All those decisions that we make, they are not all right decisions. They are probably better decisions generally than if it were to be made by one person or 2%. Because most of the decisions that are made are more transparent, and there's a lot more check and balance. There's a wider range of people's skill sets that's looking into a problem, and hence decisions that are made are probably better. But there will still be wrong decisions, the wrong hire, the wrong investment into a concept, or basically a wrong activation. And the good thing about collective leadership is that when a decision is made, it is made transparently. When a mistake is made, it is made in such a way, when a mistake is made, it is then understood by everyone. And so everyone is now able to really dive into it and see, how do we actually correct the problems or to maybe prevent such incidences again. Even though the rest of the collective leader didn't make that mistake, they would have learned from it.
I love that you brought up mistakes. I think as a society, we should normalize failure. We always celebrate successes. And but looking back, what was the biggest failure in your journey? Or maybe a failure or disappointment so deep that it really reshaped who you are today?
I think we could have been a lot bigger. We could have been a lot more impressive right now if we had been a lot more aggressive going overseas. We sort of like move forward and take one step forward, two steps back, and we have always been doing that in the past 5 years. Actually more than 5 years, before COVID, since before COVID. And I felt that ironically the failure was in the fact that we decided to go international, but we actually didn't do that really well. We have only got one outpost right now, which is in Malacca. We could have been in Bangkok, could have been in KL, Ho Chi Minh and
What do you mean
Jakarta.
you didn't do that really well? So there were plans and then it got cancelled?
Yeah, we had plans and then we just sort of like scale back. Every time we sort of like had to make a decision whether we should or we should not.
What was holding you back? What were you scared of?
My own fear, as in like, whether my wife will kill me,
That's important. Happy wife, happy life. I'm a big advocate of that.
Because it will be an investment, and basically a lot of time and commitment, overseas and all that in that sense. And I felt that was something that we could have done a lot better. We hired some directors actually to get into that environment as well, where we're going to go international. But again, we scaled back, from there. So in my opinion, that in itself, even though it doesn't come out as a failure, we have to close it off. It is a failure because we were planning to expand and we sort of like did not. Now, of course, we are lucky enough to have Malacca, and Malacca is still our basically our test case. We are building a collective leadership over there using Malaysians and all that to make sure that it will thrive over there. And now truly physically remotely as well, because you're not physically yes,
there.
That's right. We do set up. We have got Christian Sauls, who is actually our director for systems and franchise. He's actually based in Malacca right now. He's building up now. We had a team of 3 collective leaders over there. Now it's a team of 6 managing the business over there, and so you'll continue to grow. And the revenue has been growing at 18%. Which is really, really good. Yeah. And I think we will probably break even, within the next 6 months. And that will then tell us that, okay, now this internationalization itself does work. This ability to cut across and to build an iconic business in the middle of nowhere.
Wow,
can work.
So I want to talk a bit about that as well. Your approach to venue and brand building. Right. You launched your first Malaysia outpost in 2024, but instead of going to KL, you chose Malacca and a new building. And you opened 5 concepts at once across 2 stories.
Yes.
So what is the thinking behind that? Like, what is your approach to launching new venues and new brands, and when do you decide which brands do you take along? When do you decide to create a new brand? Like, what can you talk us through your thought process?
We are not brand focused. We create brands because it is necessary, because of the market environment, because of the customer's needs, or because of the landlord's request. So we sort of like create brands because of that. We now have about 30 brands. When you look at all these different brands, all these different concepts, again, we didn't build it because we just wanted another Italian brand or we wanted another Spanish brand. It was because we felt that there was a need in the market, and so we will develop that. We spend about 3 to 4 months usually developing a concept, doing market analysis, research, and then determining what will actually make sense.
And do you start with the venue, because you do like to pick very unusual venues?
Yeah.
Also, your new outlet, One Alfaro, which is at the top of Labrador Tower, which is again kind of in the middle of nowhere,
exactly,
and really hard to get to.
Yeah.
So you like to pick really unusual venues. So do you start your brand conceptualization with the venue or with the footfall? Do you look at the target market first?
So the footfall, the market direction, the venue itself, even where the wind is blowing, where the sun is setting. I think these are all very important when you actually decide on what kind of concept or what kind of brands we're going to have, because many of our venues will have at least one restaurant, sometimes two, at least one bar, sometimes two as well, and then either a cafe or a club. And so we will look at the venues that we have, and depending on the size and the beauty of the space and all that, we will then put in a solemnization area, a corporate events area, the restaurants and the bars, and of course the cafes and the clubs. Depending on, again, that location and the market need, then we will decide what kind of cuisine we should have, and what kind of service style we should have, because it makes a big difference between the different cuisines itself. The service style can actually change the concept, completely.
Yeah.
We always make our venues usable day to night, Monday to Sunday. It is something that takes
That's wise.
Yes, very, very. It takes a lot of effort to do that. Where you put your PowerPoints, where you put your seats, how do you make things modular when, most people will just put in a very big, banquet
Bucket.
setting and all that, or, a big wall and all that just to make the private rooms. For us, we try not to do that. We try to make sure that, everything can be used for restaurants, bars, clubs, cafes, events, and weddings. So it's sort of like really, really something that can turn around and
maximizing. That's very wise, with rentals the way they are these days.
Exactly. And also very good for the landlord, because the landlord, that's what they want. When they are an office building, they would like us to bring in a lot of people that comes in during the weekends. So weddings and events, is something that happens really, well for those buildings itself. In hotels itself, they want us to be able to take care of their guests. And at the same time, they want us to, bring people in and make their whole hotel very vibrant. And
That's so true. So I went to one Alfaro recently on a Sunday lunch, expecting there to be nobody, and the restaurant was full. So and for such a new restaurant, so congratulations.
Well, there are actually many of us staying in the south. So it's just that nobody wants to.
So it's unmet need.
Exactly, right. That was interesting because we did actually have the conversation when I told the team we have this opportunity out there, and the question that was raised was, there must be a reason why nobody wants to open up a mid-high-end restaurant that has got a nice view. Over there. There's really just no one that does that, right?
Yeah.
And I told them that,
what was the reason?
Well, it was just that nobody thought about it. It was when we started One Rochester, I told you what my sister said. When I started One Altitude, my father-in-law actually told me, are you sure you want to open a bar and a club in the middle of Shenton Way? It was only a Monday to Friday business, and it was largely lunch business for most of the F&B outlets there. We were the ones that changed the whole vibe of what the whole Shenton Way is about. And after we came in, and then of course MBS was built as well, and there are multiple different night spots actually opened up. But prior to that, 8 p.m. Shenton Way is like it's dead. There's nobody there. Nobody wants to dine there. And so again, even though One Altitude was really very ideal for us, it didn't start off that way. It didn't look even that way. And almost every one of our properties, people will look at it as, it's too old, too complex, or too difficult to run, and too unnatural. It cannot be iconic and all that in that sense. But by taking it over, we are able to really transform the whole space. Now, if you're only just putting a restaurant in, I think it will not work as well. It will just be like the rest. But if we are able to put in the restaurants, a bar, a cafe,
a multi-concept day to night venue.
Exactly. And so that requires us to work very closely with the landlord, to make sure that we are fitting into what they want, what they require. We go for places that are obviously very, very unexploited yet. Right. I think that's something that we have shown over and over again that can be done through the portfolio that we have.
What gives you your gumption, right? And when everybody's telling you, don't do it, it's a crazy idea, like what makes you say, okay, I believe in it, I will make a bet, and I can go to bed at night and not worry about it? Well, I think, or do you sleep well? Like, when you're launching a new project, do you still today worry about failure?
So a lot of people will come to me and congratulations, One Alfaro is now open, and I would always say that, well, it's just open. So actually, we are not even sure whether it's going to be successful yet. And that's always the case. A lot of successes, so-called, that we celebrate are not actually milestones for success yet.
That's very pragmatic and realistic.
But yes, we do need to celebrate to say that we have passed a certain milestone in a sense. But let's be very clear that we still have to work very hard, to make sure that it works. And in this industry, it is just important that whatever we have, whatever we are given, that we continue to work on it and not let it rest, because the market will catch up and then things will surpass us. And I think this is something that has a collective leadership really can do this really well, because there's always a pair of eyes that's looking at the business and saying that, look, something is wrong, or we should improve more on this, we should get more on this, and or the trend is changing, we have to look into other areas. And when you have 20 pairs of eyes looking at something, it's much better than one pair. I think that's something that really helps us significantly. And hence, when we look at the venue and when we start a concept or a project, honestly, even if it doesn't work very well up front, didn't work according to the plans that we have, we are probably not as worried. We know that we can adjust, because the agreement that we have with the landlord would always be long-term. The investments that we put in allows us to make changes to the concepts that we have, and we are always able to improve to the point where you'll be viable and you'll be good enough.
That's an interesting perspective, right? Because a lot of the thought leadership around business these days is the riches are in the niches, right? To niche down, be really unique in your offering. But for yourself, it's really spreading and having more concepts and that flexibility, that adaptability.
Correct. Well, it's still a niche in the sense that we are making it flexible, right? That in itself is a niche that very few people can play in.
Can offer.
Yeah. The skill set that we have is that we are big enough to be able to compete in the bars, cafes, clubs, and restaurant arena itself. But the ability to be able to switch is a skill set that we have that very few people are able to do so. Yeah.
And that's your competitive
advantage. That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Your venues are in such iconic spaces that are a fundamental part of the skyline of Singapore. And you've also sat on a couple of boards, right? On like the Arts House, the Singapore Nightlife Business Association, the Singapore Institute of Technology, the Industry Advisory Committee. What do you wish policymakers can better understand about the needs of F&B and lifestyle players?
When those appointments and involvement that I'm in, they do give me a really unique, wide and broad understanding of what's going on. I sort of get to understand a little bit more about what the different authorities, their jobs are and how difficult it is for them to just handle everything at one go. And frankly, every time we come across a problem and we tackle it, there will always be good reasons why the different authorities can't do certain things or need to consider certain factors and all that in a sense. And so I've always been very comfortable with that, very clear that they are all trying their best to try to improve on the environment and to improve on they are not there to cut down on vibrancy. They are just trying to contain other problems. But because there's just so many different departments and all that, I wish that there will be a mayor of the night business in Singapore, or maybe even a minister, right? Somebody that can help to tie together all the requirements across all the different authorities and come up with solutions that will help the night businesses in Singapore to thrive. Night businesses doesn't mean clubs and bars. It just means everything that happens at night. If there's anything about Singapore that I thought was really underused, was our nights. Because if we allow our activities to go right into the night, into the day, into the morning itself, Singapore probably be the best, because it's safe, it is cool at night. You basically have a lot of people that's traveling in, and they are all on different time zone, right? So when the F1 crew, when they all come to Singapore, they do not adjust to our time. They sleep and wake up European time. And for them, that's how they do not adjust to our clock.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of tourists do as well.
Yeah.
When they come over, when they are really forced to adjust to our clock itself, it doesn't help them. Why don't you just let them continue to enjoy their wines and their food and drinks, at 4 a.m. in the morning, because that's probably like 4 p.m. In their home, right? We don't have that night economy when I feel that that is actually the best time for people to dine outside, to drink outside, to enjoy the night the night coolness, the cool nights in Singapore.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I mean, there's a lot of talk, a lot of headlines in the news now about nightlife dying, the Gen Zs, they don't drink, they don't go out. But I like the reframe in thinking about it as a night economy. And when I used to be a consumer insights strategist in my last job, we wrote a lot of reports about the night economy, as a response to global warming, when it's going to become too hot to do anything in the day. I think framing it as that, like the different possibilities, even the thing about night transport, right? And the use of autonomous vehicles in night transport, which is something that the country is looking at, the use of AVs. Yeah,
well, you just brought up a few really good points, right? I mean, those are the things that mayor or that department should look into, and then start pushing Singapore along that line, because we have to be a 24-hour city. At least some parts of Singapore should be 24 hours.
And hospitality and F&B is such a key part in creating communities in the space that we live and operate in. You started one group 20 years ago as an experiment. And today, is it still an experiment to you? Or what's your why? What drives you to get out of bed every day and still do what you do?
We're always experimenting, but when I did my first experiment, the first 10 years before the book came out, that was a very quiet experiment. Nobody knew what I was trying to do. Even my guys, right? They didn't know that I was gathering data. I was, getting information. I was defining this collective leadership, because when they hear collective leadership at a point in time, they got no idea what it was really about. That, of course, with the book, that sort of like experiment actually ended. And what we do nowadays is actually we experiment with this collective leadership model itself, but in different areas, in different ways. We try to let different people take on different roles, and we see how they mature and they work. So even like the Malacca team itself is a new experiment. A lot of people say, they are different. They may not see the things the same way, but no, we think that they are the same. We feel that it is actually a question of them understanding what collective leadership really means, and how then they are able to support one another. So and we are still experimenting with the products and services that we have, which is something that we take over swimming pools, we take over courtyards, we take over car parks and all that, in a sense, to learn how to make them better, place make for the landlords and all that. So all these things are still things that we are learning. So we have grown significantly, from all these lessons that we have learned. And we are also redefining, what training and rewards are in one group, which is something that I feel is very important, especially as we become international and all that. In a sense, it needs to be very clear how the training is going to be provided to the people, whether they are in Singapore or overseas. They need to be trained to the right level, so that they can manage their collective leadership.
I really love that perspective, thinking about business as a series of experiments. And I think in that way, it's getting very hard to get into business. And, while the authorities can build, hawker centers, they can build the infrastructure, right? They can build the retail spaces, the malls, the hawker centers. But will people actually come and want to run and start businesses? It's getting very costly and it's getting very intimidating. But I think with your perspective, the idea that you could keep your full-time job and then go into it full-time and then run a business later on. And you even have an exact formula for calculating at which point you should do that. And the idea that you can do it with a group of people through the collective leadership, and the idea that and also the perspective that, you can tweak and iterate along the way. I think that makes it a lot less intimidating for the younger aspiring entrepreneurs today. For, someone who's thinking of starting a business or is maybe a couple toes in, right? And thinking, this is so hard. Why am I doing this? Should I go back to my day job? What would you say to them?
do not do this on your own. It is important that you understand that in this new environment that we are in, being on your own to start a new business is probably going to be very, very difficult, much more tedious, much more difficult than what it was in the past. And at the same time, do not just quit and jump in, because whatever that you have right now will help you in your entrepreneurship journey itself. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. A lot of people who wants to invest in you will tell you that that is the case, but that's so that they can really push you into doing that one thing for them. But I think if you truly want to start off in an entrepreneurial journey, just go ahead and get it going. Rely on others. Treat them as your peers. And work in a collective manner.
So looking ahead, what's next for you in the next 20 years? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal for the group and for yourself as well?
Maybe not 20 years, but we definitely are on a trajectory to internationalize. We see Singapore as a proof of concept that collective leadership and our portfolio model works in Singapore. So we believe that we can replicate that in Malaysia, in Bangkok, in Jakarta, in Ho Chi Minh, and North of Asia as well. We believe that we will be growing significantly after this year, and that's something that is already in the plans. So we even have a plan that can bring us to $1 billion. But
wow.
Of course, that is that would require a lot of effort.
That's very big, hairy, and audacious indeed.
Exactly. And I think that this system that we have actually does help us to grow in that way. I mean, if it's just me, I probably would only be half the size in Singapore right now, and we'll probably be half the size in Singapore right now, and maybe even not successful at all. But with a collective leadership, the team that we believe that we can create across all the different cities and across Asia itself, I believe that things can work out really well. Yeah.
And in that time, what do you think Asia's F&B and hospitality industry will look like? What changes do operators need to prepare for? What changes are you preparing for?
Every single country that we have looked into, they are all very competitive, every one of them. Most of the cities that we are looking into, they will have a middle income group that will actually grow very fast. I think in Asia itself, or in Southeast Asia, there's actually a 60% growth of the middle income disposable income, a 60% growth over the next 5 years. You can imagine that with this growth in the middle income, they will spend on lifestyle F&B, which is really what we are doing. Weddings as well, they will all come down to that 250 pax size, which is really ideal for us. And hence, we believe that anywhere that we go to, our business model itself is probably going to work really well. And we believe that, all these things that's coming together just make Southeast Asia really, really lucrative for us. There's actually a lot of people that are moving into Southeast Asia itself, whether it be Bali, Phuket, Malaysia, and of course Singapore, for the higher net worth ones. It will just mean that, the plans that we have is probably going to be met even earlier.
Wow, I'm totally aligned with you on that. I'm a big Southeast Asia bull. I think there's so much opportunities here, so much innovation coming out of our region, and world-leading innovation. And that's why I wanted to start the Atypical Asia podcast. And that's why I think you are the perfect guest for my show. So thank you for coming on. And I've learned so much from you today. Right. It's been such a fascinating conversation. So thank you, Joseph, for your time.
Really, really, thank you very much.